You ever have one of those moments where an emotional reaction just takes over? It feels so big, so completely overwhelming that it just hijacks everything? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into why that happens, and more importantly, we're going to look at some really powerful ways to stay in the driver's seat, especially when those huge feelings have roots in our past.
Just imagine this. You've planned a dinner party. It's going to be great. Your friends are there. The food's all ready. But your partner is an hour late, and there's been no call, no text. You feel that, don't you? That familiar knot of panic twisting in your stomach, that hot anger creeping up your chest, and just like that, the perfect evening you had in your head feels like it's about to shatter.
And then they finally walk in the door. They just forgot. They're embarrassed. Your guests are trying to make it all okay, but for you, it's way too late. You're trying so hard to just act normal, to keep it together, but you just can't. That old feeling of being forgotten or abandoned is just exploding out of you. And now, your reaction is the new problem. The evening's ruined. And the worst part? That wave of shame that hits you right after.
So, what is this thing? This incredibly powerful force that can take over. It actually has a name. And just understanding it is the first crucial step toward getting a handle on it. This isn't just about being too emotional. It's something much more specific. It's called emotional dysregulation. And what that really means is when our feelings are just out of proportion to what's actually happening. They can show up as these huge, intense bursts of emotion, or maybe crying at a totally inappropriate time, like in the middle of a work meeting. And what's really interesting is that it can also swing the complete opposite way, into a total emotional flatness, a sudden nothingness after a big outburst. It's like a light bulb that glows way, way too bright and then just poof. Burns out. And this is why so much of the common advice we hear just doesn't work. We're always told just feel your feelings or trust your emotions. But look, if your feelings are like a destructive tornado tearing through your life, you don't want to just stand there and feel it. For some of us, that advice is actually dangerous. It can create new traumas and do some serious damage to the relationships we care about the most.
And this, right here, is so important. If any of this is sounding familiar, please hear this. It is not your fault. You did not choose this. This is actually a very common, you could even say normal, response for a nervous system that had to deal with trauma growing up. It's a survival mechanism that just stuck around long after the danger passed.
Okay, so if just feeling our feelings isn't the answer, then what is? We need a completely new goal. And it all starts with a new way of thinking about the problem, a total reframe. It's about shifting from being a victim of your emotions to becoming the pilot.
I absolutely love this metaphor. Think of that huge wave of emotion as an airplane getting ready for takeoff. Once that thing is in the air, it is a massive deal to get it back down. The real work, the real skill, is noticing it when it's just starting to taxi toward the runway. The goal is to do whatever you need to do to keep that airplane on the ground. It's all about catching it early.
So, how do we actually do that? How do we keep the airplane grounded when we can feel the engines starting to roar? Let's get right into a practical toolkit with things you can start using today, right in the moment.
All right, the very first tool, and this one is the most important, is just to notice it's happening. That's it. Just say it in your head, okay, I'm having an emotional reaction right now. That simple act of awareness creates a tiny bit of space. Then, tool number 2, slow. Everything down. When we get dysregulated, our whole system just wants to go a million miles an hour. So you have to consciously, intentionally put on the brakes, take a big pause before you answer. It's like you're tapping the brakes on that airplane before it ever gets close to the runway.
Now here is a brilliant little visualization for when you feel tears coming at a really inconvenient time. Imagine you have a volume knob right below your belly button. If you feel those tears welling up, it's because that knob is cranked up to an 8 or a 9, maybe even an 11 if you're a Spinal Tap fan. In your mind, just reach down and dial that knob way back to a 2. See, you're not shutting your feelings off completely. You're just turning down the volume. Sometimes you gotta get physical to change what's going on in your head. First, practice what my grandma used to call restraint of pen and tongue. Just don't send that angry text. Don't say the cutting remark. Venting usually just throws gasoline on the fire. Second, move your body hard. Run up a flight of stairs, do some jumping jacks. Getting your heart rate up actually helps rinse the stress chemicals out of your system. And third, use your senses. The simple feeling of cold water on your hands and face can be incredibly grounding. It just pulls you right back into the present moment.
I can almost hear what you're thinking, but it feels so urgent. I have to say this thing right now. And you're right. That feeling of urgency is so powerful, so convincing, isn't it? It feels like a genuine emergency.
And here's the paradox. When you have a history with trauma, that intense feeling of urgency is almost always a false alarm. It's an old emergency response system kicking in for a situation that is not an emergency. That feeling is actually your cue to pause for twice as long as you think you should. Because honestly, very, very few things in our relationships truly need to be solved this very second. You know, at the end of the day, we can't expect someone else to calm us down. It's such a common fantasy, right? That if we could just explain our pain perfectly, the other person will soothe us and make it all better. But in reality, coming at someone with that much intensity usually just makes them defensive or scared. Regulation, it's an inside job. A really powerful tool for this is what's called emergency writing. Get all those fearful, resentful thoughts out on paper first before you ever bring them to another person. So, what's the reward for all this hard work? For learning to keep the airplane on the ground? It's not just about avoiding blow-ups. The payoff is huge, and it can change everything about how you connect with the people in your life.
When you start to master this, your relationships they become gentler. That awful, heavy shame that follows an overreaction starts to fade. Instead of draining the trust and love out of your connections, you start building them up. You find that you can still express disappointment or hurt, but now you can do it with elegance, with fairness, and with love. Your connections don't just survive. They actually start to get deeper and stronger and just nicer. This is how you start to build a life that feels calmer, safer, and more connected. So, as we wrap up, I want you to think about it. The next time you feel that emotional airplane starting to taxi down the runway, which one of these tools are you going to keep in your pocket ready to pull out?